Hey, Sunny.
Hi, Liz.
Thank you for coming along on the podcast with me.
Thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
What do you remember about how we met and got to know each other?
Well, I think that's a really good question and something I haven't thought about since we've known each other, I think, for a few years now. And it's funny because I'm trying to remember back. It was during the pandemic, and someone that I was talking to at SCP said, "You need to know Liz." And we had a phone call, so I didn't actually see you. I remember you like going through all of the things you have done and were doing like in the business world. And I was just like, my mouth was open the entire call, but you couldn't see me. And I just remember being, like, so totally impressed with your experience and, like, again, your, like, diverse experience in the business world. I don't know, it just stood out to me very clearly. You were very helpful, as all of our SCP people tend to be, right? You were very, like, welcoming. But then I didn't actually meet you in person until one of the APA conferences.
It's funny. I don't remember our first phone call.
You
I
don't?
I don't remember our first phone call. I'm reaching back in the memory banks. I don't remember our first phone call. I remember when we met in person. I remember
Okay.
when we met at APA convention, and I want to say I don't think it was Minneapolis. I think it was DC.
I think it was Minneapolis.
It was Minneapolis. Okay.
Right, you were in Minneapolis, right?
I wasn't. Oh, I was
Okay, yeah.
definitely in Minneapolis. I was
Hospitality
oh,
suite.
no, it wasn't Minneapolis because we were in that sort of weird Airbnb with the, like, semi-rickety stairs.
Right, that was in Minneapolis?
That was Minneapolis.
Yeah, okay,
Yes,
yes.
okay, good. Alright, now we will get there. Yes, I remember you and I were talking about the semi-rickety stairs of the Airbnb in Minneapolis and the walk from the Airbnb to the conference center, because we did that a
Yes,
couple of times. So I was trying to remember because it was a long walk from the places we were staying in both DC and Minneapolis to the convention centers in their respective locations, and I was trying to remember which one of those long walks it was. For whatever reason, it stuck in my head that it was DC, but now that you say it, and now I remember, it was Minneapolis, and that's what I remember. What I remember was the first time that we had talked in person, we were walking from the convention center back to the house that we were using as our hospitality suite. And that was where we kind of had our first in-person chat. I was really taken by how you were using, like, all of your training experience and background and then thinking about things that were really, I mean, for our area, almost a little out there, such as music and live performance. And I remember how much we both found just music to be inspiring to us personally. And that was sort of the piece that stuck out to me because it was the unexpected. I hadn't expected that to be something that would be a point of resonance. And it
yeah.
was. And then I got to know you as I started doing more in the society, and you have been extremely involved. And seeing how you show up and volunteer and give of yourself and participate in community has just been really awesome. And because of that, we've gotten to know each other better and more. And yeah, I've really enjoyed all of it, all of the pieces, and finding the little commonalities that I didn't expect.
Yes, me too, yes. I clearly remember that in-person time in Minnesota as well, and again, going back to this phone call we had, it was kind of like a brief call, and again, I don't remember even who put us in contact with each other, but yeah, I didn't have a face to put to you either, so it was just all of these calls I was doing during COVID, so I was probably one of those for you as well. But, I remember at the conference that you were, one of the conference chairs, you were sort of organizing everything, and I really got to see sort of how you put things into place and also all of the ideas that you had for SCP moving forward, and, I remember really being struck by that, and then, finding this other thing we had in common was also really nice.
I'm curious what is important to you that other people know about you beyond what they see in your bio?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I think it comes up a lot in my work, right? So, right? You know me personally, my big interest in music. I really have gotten over the past 10 years or so really into EDM. electronic dance music and love attending festivals and shows all over the world. It's a big thing for me. I'm also a big traveler and big foodie. So I've really combined all of those things together in, doing what I love, those three things. And I think not everybody knows that, right, when they meet me. And I think for some it's unexpected since I'm a consultant and trusted leadership advisor. They're like, you do what? Or, what are you interested in? I don't even know what those letters stand for. So I think sometimes people are surprised by that. Another thing that's not in my bio is that I saved my grandmother from drowning when I was like about 11 years old or so. And that was really like my first experience of helping people, which then led me to become a lifeguard. And then I found psychology, decided to help people in that way. But that was like an experience for me where I was sort of thrown into the deep end, so to say, of, helping somebody. And it was an experience that really like shaped my career in a way.
Would you be open to talking more about what that experience was like?
Sure, sure. So I was swimming with my grandmother who didn't know how to swim, who was trying to stay in the lower water. And my grandfather, who also didn't know how to swim, was outside of the water. And then my grandmother sort of slipped into deeper water and started going under. And my grandfather was screaming from the sidelines, "Save your grandmother, save your grandmother." And I had always been a good swimmer since I was really young. It was like my thing. I just did. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what I did, but because I didn't know how to do what I was doing, but I got her back to where she could stand. It was a really intense experience, obviously.
And knowing you now and your desire to help others. And we've talked about how, in particular, the DJ community has had a lot of people who have suffered in silence,
Yeah.
who didn't have anybody on the sidelines yelling for us to save them. How you have really made a career out of showing up for people who've needed help, and in many cases at their most vulnerable. And in those moments where they need support, they may not have the words to ask for it. It may not show up as the type of crisis that somebody would expect to see.
Right.
Maybe it shows up in stage fright. It's a signal. It's a data point. It's its own call for help. And thank you for sharing that story and the insight that it gives into you. You take strengths you have. You take skills you have. You are a strong swimmer.
Thank
You
you.
care. And if someone tells you there's a need, you show up.
Yes.
And you've
That's
translated this now into your professional life where you are and showing up for people who may be silently drowning. The perspective that you've just kind of shared on what happened and putting that together with where you are, these threads, they all interweave.
Yes. They definitely do. And I think that's an interesting way of saying it. I haven't really thought about it, how it's translated to, the way I work with DJs and artists currently. But it's a great point.
I find it fascinating that you have applied what we do in psychology to DJs and music production. It's something that I don't think most people would associate these two areas with each other. I don't think most people would associate psychology and music. Now, those of us in these spaces say, well, of course it goes together. Can you talk a little bit more about how you have brought these things together and how how you've really created a practice in this space?
Sure. So I think, psychology does come into play in a variety of ways, right? When it comes to music, DJs, artists, right? One piece is the psychology of business, right? So I think really building a brand, developing those business skills and potentially leadership skills, right? Because as DJs move up in, what they're doing, they're building teams, they're often founding record labels, and they don't have the psychology of leadership and business to, they don't have that training basically to understand how to do that and do it well. So I think that's one place where I come in. And then there's also so much performance psychology involved in, maintaining peak performance, right? What is your pre-performance routine? How do you stay grounded when you're performing? And then also, how do you manage that high afterward, right? Because there are so many highs and lows, not just with performance, but also the emotional highs and lows of, rejection, dealing with imposter syndrome, and like I mentioned, performance anxiety, some of those things. So I think that's where more of the wellness psychology piece comes in, right? With self care. I think for many DJs and artists who are touring, self care often gets put on the back burner, right? Because touring life is a totally different thing. And managing that stress. And then there's also the politics of the industry, which is another piece that, DJs are navigating. So there are really so many different areas of psychology that come into play when I'm working with a DJ. And I think that's one reason why I don't have a program. Some like people will say to me, artists will say to me, "What's your program? Like, can I get in the program?" But I don't have like this generic program that I run everyone through because everyone's challenges and point in their career and sort of what stressors they're dealing with now are different. So really my work is very individualized with each DJ or music industry professional.
So you go to a ton of events and you love live experiences. What's something you've been to lately that has you activated and engaged?
Well, I was just at Miami Music Week and World Music Conference, and those were they're two overlapping events, which are tons of shows and also panels, also events. I mean, just it's like jam packed with lots of different things. And that was really exciting because I got to see lots of DJs I know. I'm always out there to support DJs I know. You will find me right in front for lots of DJs. I'm always out there to support no matter what the size of the artist because I really, I believe in the community piece, the support piece. It makes such a difference. And, I've had DJs say to me, it meant so much to know that you were out there, right? That I saw you out there. So I attended a ton of shows. I couldn't make everything because it was just too much, but I got to see a lot of, DJs I know who are doing amazing things. They've sort of dealt with the imposter syndrome, the performance anxiety, so much rejection. And now they're playing shows, they're doing well. So that was really exciting to see. I helped one DJ who was, navigating some pre-performance anxiety to go out there and just crush it. So that was great too. But, just being with the community for a week straight, day and night in all these events was really energizing. I met so many amazing people, got to connect with people who I've never met in person before. So it was just a great experience all around.
You not only have work that you are good at, talented at, but you really enjoy. And it seems like it's very soul nourishing for you.
Definitely, definitely. I love it, and, me, Liz, I do work in a variety of industries, right? I started off hedge funds and construction and, moved all the way to the spectrum of nonprofits and things in between, whether that's law or, oil and gas, whatever it was. But, this is a community that I'm so passionate about. I love the music, love the community, and I'm in it. So it's just totally different when I'm working in this industry and, even helping some other disruptors in this industry who are building new businesses to help women, because as far as DJs go in this industry, it's really only about 15% women. So that's something that's important to me too, is helping, other women who are helping women in the industry building businesses, or not even necessarily DJs themselves, but building businesses to help uplift other women DJs and really get them out there.
We've talked about your work, and I know you've worked in diverse industries. You've worked with people at all different levels of their sort of the professional spectrum, from the C-suite executives to people who are just starting off on their career paths. I mean, you've got such a diversity of experience, not just industry-wise, but also just where with different places and where people are in their professional maturity. What is something that you are working on, whether it's your own business, it's a project? What are some things you're working on right now that you're really excited about, or perhaps you're working toward them?
Sure. Well, there are two things that come to mind right away. I'm sure there are lots of other things as well that I'm doing because I am doing a lot of things right now. But one thing that I'm working on is I'm working with a record label to create a service for their DJs where they can have me sort of like an on-call or as needed, right? In terms of what they need consulting on, what they need advising on, whatever it is that they're dealing with. But, I'm working with the record label to develop really having me on standby in a way, right? Which I think is something kind of groundbreaking because I think labels are realizing they need to take care of their artists. Artist wellness matters. And if artists burn out, it's, everyone loses, really. So that's really exciting piece. I'm actually in talks with two different record labels to do programs like this. And then the other piece is I'm also building out a subscription where people could have more access to me because something else that's really important to me, I understand that DJs that are not at a certain level can't afford to work with me one on one. But it's also important for me to provide value for them as well. So, what I'm working on is like a community, right? A community service where I will go live. I will do sort of a training on various different topics related to psychology and and their career and challenges they might be facing, followed by like a Q&A, a live Q&A. So it's really to allow people to have access to me. And then I guess now that I think of it, the third thing I'm still doing this year, it's sort of been in process, is a book tour with these like networking DJ level up events.
Tell me more about the book tour.
So I really kicked off the book tour back in November with a launch party. And what I did was I brought local DJs who I know to play at the party. It was also industry networking as well. So it was like a networking party, but also showcasing local DJs that are up and coming. So that was really cool. So now I am repeating that in different cities. So the next one will be in LA. And working on that. I'm working on the venue for that, and then I will have one in DC on May 30th and again, I'm bringing DJs from the city that I'm going to, and then another really big one at the end of July in Toronto. And that one's exciting too because I'm partnering with another DJ author. And we're doing this event together. He'll be playing, and then we're also bringing in other local DJs from Toronto that we both know. So it'll be sort of a joint event with him.
My mind is kind of blown by this. What I really want to know, though, is what are you listening to right now?
I mean, I'm listening to some newer music, right? So new Martin Garrix, new Armin, some of the big names, new James Hype. But, on the classic playlist is always Levels by Avicii.
Avicii.
Avicii is really who got me into this music years ago, right? And I love that song. That's why I sort of incorporated Level Up into the title of my book. That's the song. But, I like a lot of like the main stage artists I listen to frequently, but I do have a lot of like up and coming artists that I totally support and go out to see frequently. So it's tough to like narrow down my playlist because I also listen to a lot of festival sets. So like right now I've been listening to a lot of sets from Ultra, which took place a few weeks ago in Miami, and just started listening to some Coachella sets. So I'm always sort of like checking out sets and what artists are doing rather than like a specific playlist.
That's really cool. So, and it made me just think how I really started learning to appreciate the art of DJing was when I was at university at Rice. We had a radio station. I think the school actually has managed to maintain it, but we had an FM station, 50,000 watt FM station, KTRU Houston 91.7 FM. And I was a DJ on the station, not in the two turntables and a microphone kind of way, but rather I hosted a couple of shows while I was there. And one of my favorite shows to listen to, the MK Ultra show. Shout out to Sandeep Gill, who is still working in the world of digital sound. It was getting to listen to and see DJs work in studio and watching them mix and cut and scratch and pull together sound. It was beautifully postmodern, right? You're taking things that exist and now you're recombining them in new ways to make something entirely novel that reaches back into what was before. So many different levels of messages that would come through. My first DJ love at that time was DJ Shadow. And now that I have kids who are beginning to develop their own musical tastes, I find myself trying to sneak in some of what sadly now would be classified as the classics or the oldies, but getting them to listen to Introducing and getting them to hear Organ Donor for the first time and really just sort of introducing them to how music can be created in real time and how you can be part of that process. Because you're not only listening to music that has been created, that draws on music that was created in some cases centuries ago, you're watching that emerge as something new in real time. And your feedback to the DJ as they are performing is also what drives them to create further. And there is this symbiotic co-creation that emerges. And it's so powerful and beautiful. And it's how music brings us together. It is our heartbeats. The beat that we're all born with is our heartbeat. And so if somebody says they don't have rhythm, you do. It's in your chest and you've had it since before you were born. And to be able to be part of that, it's remarkable. I don't have a better word. It's just cool.
Well, I'm so impressed. I didn't know that you were like a radio personality.
I'm a personality, all right. Sunny, you are one of the easiest people to talk to. You have this gift where you are fascinated by people. Like, you are so good at showing interest in the things other people are excited about and encouraging them. I'm really curious right now, who are the people that you most want to be in dialogue with?
Really, I'm looking to connect with, DJs and artists who maybe are really feeling the pressure because I think, that whole concept of what got you here won't get you there. As DJs become more successful and, reach celebrity status, the pressure and the stress gets heavier, right? Like they may be feeling that pressure, that imposter syndrome, that they're not good enough. They may be comparing themselves to others. And I think, I'd love to talk to those artists who are dealing with that and don't talk about it because that's never what you see on social media. Hardly ever, right? You see people are posting up their numbers and their most professional edited video. But I think there's so much underneath that people aren't talking about. And that's what I'm here for.
That's the most perfect wrap up of you I've heard. That's what I'm here for. You're here for people. You're here for people who need help and may not know how to or be in a good position to ask for help themselves, but they have signals of needing that help. There's data that's telling them, or those around them who care about them, that maybe a little extra support and scaffolding would help.
Yes, exactly.
In your work, you help the people who make the music and bring the crowds.
Exactly. And that really reminds me of a piece, an op-ed I recently had published in EDM.com, where I talk about, people attend festivals, attend shows for this sense of togetherness, a sense of belonging, to feel connected and to have this shared experience. But there are so many times where the DJ, well, number one, the DJ is alone up there, right? The DJ can get energy from the crowd, but what is it like for that DJ who is there, alone and maybe with a small team of people who they work with to then leave and go back to a hotel room and they're alone? So, I think there is this side of loneliness that DJs experience. And I think the bigger they get, the more that grows. And I think the fans don't always see that because they're there having a good time and, connecting and feeling that sense of togetherness.
Thank you so much for coming along for this ride with me.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Same.